Osgood Perkins is back after Longlegs with a very different movie that leans far more into comedy. Based on a Stephen King short story, this one is about a cursed wind-up toy that causes freak accidents to random people. This is The Monkey. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
That
is a monkey sound. There are no monkeys in this movie, though, despite the title of the movie.
Well, I mean, that's a bit debatable. There's a toy monkey.
There's a toy monkey. There's no physical, living, breathing, furry monkey.
Did you know that going in, or was that a surprise to you?
No, I was aware it was a toy going in. I think the premise. I don't even know if I knew the premise, but I think I'd heard someone say it's like a comedic Final Destination. I think that's like the way it was sold to me at one point. But yes, today we are here to talk about The Monkey, a brand new release that just came out. We went to the theater. How excited is that? We went to the movies to see the first movie from 2025 that we're covering. And we will start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into spoilers. And if you are enjoying the show, please do hit the like button on YouTube. It helps us out a bunch if you do. You also get bonus content and support everything over at Patreon, but I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is based on a Stephen King thing, right?
That is correct. Yeah, it's a short story that appeared in Skeleton Crew, which I believe is his second short story collection. That one has stuff like The Mist, and I think The Jaunt is in that one. Some more of the notable ones. But yeah, I believe it started. I forget what magazine it is, but I believe it was first published in like one of maybe Playboy or something. Like a lot of Stephen King's early short stories he would publish in like, male adult magazines, which is kind of funny to think about.
That's strange to me. I feel like people buying Playboy weren't buying it to read a spooky short story.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, I guess it is like, I don't know if this is like a cover story for like if someone catches you reading it, you're like, no, like I'm not looking at those awful degrading photos of women. No, I just am here for the sophistication, the short storytelling.
I'm masturbating to the story about the toy monkey.
Of course.
That's what's happening. So I mean, basic premise is that there's a toy monkey that's, I guess, cursed, we'll call it. Whenever it's played, it kills someone, and who it kills is seemingly pretty random for the most part. I think there's maybe some rules you could theorize about as to who it picks, but it's fairly open to like not knowing what's going to happen. I think in hindsight you can sort of look at the movie and go, oh, maybe there's this rule or that rule, but for the most part it seems pretty random. But that's basically it. The movie's kind of interesting in that it's split into kind of a structure between two time periods where we follow the main character as a child for a good, I want to say at least a third of the movie is when the main character's a kid, before we skip ahead to present day and continue the story from there. Which, by the way, it's really distressing to me now, Tim, that when there's a character who is like, a parent, middle-aged, and they do like, here's like their section of their childhood and the flashback part of the movie. It's very distressing to me now that period they flash back to is the same period where I was a child. That's very upsetting to me now.
Sure.
I'm not going to lie. When they said it's 1999, and he's a little bit older than me, don't get me wrong. In fact, he's probably bang on your age, if I was to guess.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what age were you in 99?
99, I would have been, 13?
Yeah, I think the kid's about 13, 14.
That seems about right.
In the flashback here, yeah. I was 10 for the record. Yeah, I just a weird little thing growing up. But yeah, so we'll get into it. So this is another movie directed by Osgood Perkins, and I say another because Longlegs It was less than a year ago it came out, and for us reviewing, we just reviewed Longlegs a couple of months ago, so it feels absurdly soon for his next movie to be out, but something must have been on the shelf for a little bit, and that's why they've came out so close together.
And I think it might have been, might have had something to do with like strikes or some stuff getting delayed, but I could be wrong, but I think his next movie might also be this year.
That is wild, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, there was both a writer and an actor strike. Maybe that did some weird delays to releasing of some things. But yeah, it's a lot of movies to be coming out from one director in a short span of time. In this day and age, you know. But back in the days when they churned out a movie in 3 months, it was maybe a bit more common.
Yeah, when you were a child in the 90s.
Har 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 har. Very good, Tim. Very good. You're older than me, you son of a bitch. All right. Tim.
Yeah.
What did you think of The Monkey?
So actually, I had pretty high hopes coming in. If you listen to our Long Legs review, I kind of talked about my history with Perkins, who I think is a very stylish director who, clearly has some talent and can make very pretty movies, but his early stuff just really didn't hit for me. Despite recognizing that they looked quite good and that sort of thing. But then I was surprised with Long Legs how I was actually feeling it quite a bit. I like the story and the performances and just altogether that was a nice package for me. So that made me a bit more excited to see this. And then obviously the fact that it's based on a Stephen King short story, got me really amped, even though, there really isn't much to the original story. I actually wanted to reread it before seeing the movie, but my copy of the book is still at the house. I couldn't get it in time. But from what I remember, it's pretty short. It's a lot more serious, and it has a similar structure where it's like again, just going from memories, but I believe it's like brothers talking about this toy they got from their family, from their dad, and that again similar, like if you play it, someone dies, and then they end up throwing it in a lake, and then a bunch of fish die in the lake. Which I believe is how it ends. So it's not like a bad short story, but it's one you just kind of read, you're like, oh, okay, fine. You don't really, I don't imagine it as being very cinematic, and obviously it's pretty short, so they really had to embellish a lot. But regardless, I'm always interested, like, even when I have a suspicion they're going to be bad, I'm always interested to see how a director is going to interpret a King story. So I'm always like at least somewhat excited. And then like I knew like some of the people in it, like Tatiana Maslany, who I'm a fan of. So overall, I was pretty excited. And then I think we had been hearing like some good buzz about it. And then I gotta say I was pretty I guess pleasantly
very committal.
Yeah.
Yes.
I try to think of the best way to describe it, because I guess what I would say is that this movie I think is a lot of fun. I'm not gonna say it's like amazing or like it was greatest cinematic experience I've had in a long time, but it is the kind of movie that I feel like maybe it's been a while since I've seen where it's like, oh, I just had a blast with it. Like it's it's not taking itself very seriously. Although I think there are like some themes and some interesting like ties to the director that we can pull and talk about. But it's kind of just like a fun roller coaster movie where you're just really excited to see what's going to happen next. The deaths are very over the top, but I think in a very fun way. I have a few complaints, like like sometimes it is a little like CGI, which is understandable because sometimes they're kind of crazy, so it's like it'd be hard to do that practically, but that always kind of takes away a little bit. And then I think once they do like the first time jump, I've heard some people complain that it starts dragging a bit. Like I went and saw it with my friend, and he was like, "Man, yeah, once they, get to the grown up age, it just slows down really a lot." Which I guess I maybe agree with a little bit, but it didn't affect me too much. But yeah, still overall, I had a pretty fun time, and I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I mean the structure is kind of interesting because typically when you've got like a prologue where you're doing like, oh, here's the characters as kids, and then we're going to like jump ahead. It's usually a much shorter thing where you're allowed to be slow when you jump ahead because you're still just kind of starting the movie. But in the way this movie is, it's like a good like at least half an hour, but it might even be like 45 minutes in before we jump ahead to the present day. So it does feel a little bit like we're starting the movie again to some extent. Like for one of the things that makes it stick out is like the opening chunk. Like there's narration, like the main character's narrating and sort of reminiscing about his childhood. But then once we get to present day, it kind of completely goes away, and it does kind of make sense because he was doing it in past tense, and now he's an adult. But at the same time, I'm like, well, was he narrating this like before we jumped ahead in time, and so like now he's stopped?
It's a good
because
question.
He's already done. I don't know. There's like a weird disconnect to kind of that choice.
Yeah. I didn't really think about that, but I one thing I did think, or one thing that's kind of interesting is like, I think because of the narration, you realize that all right, at some point we're gonna see him like grown up or whatever, or skip ahead. But yeah, if they didn't have the narration, I probably would have just assumed that the movie would have been about the kids because like you said, it goes on for quite a bit.
Maybe that's even one of the reasons why they chose to do it, is they wanted to build the expectation that the main part of the movie was coming after that. So it wouldn't be such a shock when we just leave the kids behind. But yeah, I mean, I had fun. Like, I think it is an entertaining movie. It did get some good laughs out of the audience. Not that there was a big audience there because I saw it at a weird time on a Monday, but like there was some chuckles at a few lines. Not every attempt at a joke worked, but it definitely had some good ones. There was some good like ironic cuts and things like that, or stuff or to that nature. But I would say that it's kind of weird because like I think it's directed well. I think it's funny. I think the deaths are over the top, and I think it also feels like it doesn't quite hit the heights that I thought that it maybe could have done. Because when the movie started, and it kind of starts with this bold little prologue scene before we even get to the kids, that kind of feels like it's setting up a tone. And I was like, oh, this actually feels like it's going to be like a great time based on this opening scene and how the opening scene ends. And then the movie's good, and the movie's got some fun stuff in it, and there's some quotable lines as well. Say it or I'll eat your placenta is a line that's going to stick with me for some time. Context for that and spoilers. But at the same time, when it got to the end of the movie, I was like, well, some of the crazy stuff didn't feel like it maybe escalated in a way. Now, technically it does. Like, on paper, it escalates because you could say, hey, all this crazy stuff's happening. But I don't know if I felt like the escalation as like an audience member, where it felt like, whoa, this is getting more like, how do I compare it to? Like, take Cabin in the Woods, right? When you get to the third act of Cabin in the Woods, it feels like, holy shit, we're doing this. Like, you have that kind of like wow factor to it. And I think this movie, when I realized we were in the ending and we're like, okay, this is the last chunk, obviously, where we're at now, I was sort of like, I don't know if I feel like we've built like a big climax that I'm excited about. I feel a little indifferent to like where the story is. And like, I get the themes and I get the character arc that the main character is going through. But I don't think it quite like landed as well as it could have done. So I feel a little like it's really fun and there's some really cool stuff in it, but I would say it's also a little underwhelming by the end.
Yeah, like I don't. It's kind of interesting because the deaths are so outrageous and over the top, which is great. But so it might sound like a weird thing to complain about, but they already kind of start off like pretty big. So. Yeah, like you're talking about the escalation, and there's a lot of deaths too. Like, like with Final Destination or something, you kind of have like your group of people that you're like, all right, so I know this is how many people are gonna die. I was kind of surprised, like when we get to a point where it's like, oh wow, like yeah, there's a lot of people dying, which it on paper isn't a bad thing, but like you're talking about, if you're looking at it like from a story, viewpoint or something, yeah, it is kind of hard to after a certain point, you're like, all right, these are a lot of fun, but where do we go from here? So it's I agree with what you're saying. Like I think it is really fun, but yeah, I don't know if it's like I'm rushing out to people and saying like, oh my god, you got to go out, like, catch it in the theater like right now. Like it's something I would definitely recommend, but yeah, it's more like for the fun over the topness, and it kind of is missing maybe like that crucial character arc or something, or maybe some underlying themes or something that would maybe put it over the top or make you care a little bit more, like, which is kind of weird because it's not like I think the performances are all good. Like I like the characters and stuff. Like it's like I'm saying anything was bad, but I don't know.
I think maybe part of it is that the main character Hal, he has this thing where he never gets like, how do I put this? Because he does care. He cares about what's happening, and he's concerned about the monkey for sure. But I don't know. Like despite all the things he sees, because it's always played for sort of comic effect, where he's just kind of in like, oh, this is happening again, kind of. Isn't that funny to us? Kind of like mode. I don't know if I ever felt like it ramped, because ultimately, like there are stakes at the end of the movie. There's like jeopardy to someone that he cares about and all that. Like there's things there that should feel like it's a big deal. But I don't know. Like once they, I mean, I'm dodging spoilers here, but like they kind of like. When they try to do stuff, when they sort of reveal what it's going to be doing in the last act of the movie, I don't know if that ever really felt like it came together in a way where it felt like the exciting climax that I wanted from what the premise was. So I don't know. I'll have to elaborate that way more when we're in spoilers, but there's definitely some interesting turns, and I almost wonder if like if we just had like more important characters who were there to die, like, because I would say that like, yeah, there's a lot of deaths, but like after a certain point it's really just a lot of like guest characters who are introduced with the purpose to die, which is fine. You want a lot of those because you want to see a lot of cool deaths, but it didn't really feel like really any of like the important characters were in jeopardy of dying. I don't know, like there's like a weird, there's kind of just a little extra something missing, right? There's just something little missing. It stops it from being like, holy shit, this is this crazy new movie you have to go out and see, like a Cabin in the Woods, or like a, I don't know, what's another surprising horror movie that was really easy to recommend in the last decade? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of trying to think of maybe like, I don't know, a similar feel to like Tucker and Dale versus Evil or something like that. Where like, I don't know, the like one thing for me, which I don't know if you knew this, but I like heard that the movie was crazy, but I didn't realize that it was like a full-on comedy. So I was actually like pretty surprised, because I thought like, oh yeah, there might be like some outrageous deaths and stuff, but I didn't realize that it was like actively just like trying to be jokey and funny, which isn't a bad thing. It's just I didn't really know that like going in, which I mean maybe sometimes that might work in your favor when you're like, oh, I was expecting something else, but it's like making me laugh a lot. And I wouldn't say like every joke landed, but there were definitely I'd say more often than not I was laughing or gasping at something that happened.
Yeah, I don't know why I sound too negative, because I think it's pretty solid, and it was a very easy watch. There's very memorable lines and deaths, and just lots of things that'll stick out. I did not have a bad time by any means, and we do much worse on this show. But
absolutely,
it did also feel like, oh, it could have been something special, and it never quite got to special. So there's almost like a little tinge of disappointment by the end for me as well.
It's just no, I mean I get that. I would say I still liked it. Like I'd probably even say like I really liked it or liked it a lot. But yeah, it is missing maybe a little something to get it over to like that loved it kind of territory.
Yeah, I liked it, didn't love it. Yeah, I think that's the best way of saying it, to be honest.
I will probably watch it again though at some point. So I mean, who knows? Maybe if going in, if expectations are different. We'll see if it changes, but yeah, again, don't want to sound too negative because I'd still say it's pretty solid, especially I would say, sorry, yeah, I'm trying to think of like the last Stephen King adaptations we've gotten, but I think this is definitely the best, like by miles. I can't think of yeah, like I know like we had like Salem's Lot last year, which was just terrible, and then I'm sure there's more before then, but I'm thinking of like, you know, It Chapter 2 or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I would still put this like pretty high above, like, you know, in terms of Stephen King.
I mean, this was better than It Chapter 1. That's not mince words here. Never mind the Chapter 2, which was terrible.
Yeah. 2 is terrible. Like there are things I liked about 1, but it still is a miss.
Yeah.
No.
Trust me, there's no shortage of bad Stephen King adaptations or related movies. I say related because at this point there's like, you know, here's the prequel to the remake of Pet Sematary. Oh no, it's terrible. Not that King had much to do with that particular thing, but he still planted the seed, damn it.
Exactly.
So, I don't know, the last good Stephen King adaptation before this, The Mist? Are we going back that far?
The Mist is great, and I do think at one point Darabont might have been attached to the monkey, because I think it's something that's been floating around for a while. I mean, we didn't do it on the show because I don't know if it has like a few horror-y kind of elements, but I actually did like 1922. And then Gerald's Game I liked.
Well, that was okay. I mean, I don't think I loved that as much as like other people seem to. But I thought it was. It was all right. I didn't love it though. I'd probably say I like the Monkey Mole and Gerald's Game.
Yeah, I'd still put it on the higher end of King movies, but
for sure. I mean, we've got a scale where a lot of stuff's in the other half. So,
but
sure.
I mean, regardless though, yeah, I would say that the Monkey is definitely the best in a while, and overall, it would be pretty high up in a Stephen King ranking.
Yeah. So Theo James plays the adult version of both Hal and Bill because they're twins. Which I'm going to be honest, see, when they were kids, I didn't realize it was the same actor playing both kids. I legitimately thought it was 2 different actors.
I thought that they might be like twin. I thought they might be different actors, but they might be like actual twins, maybe not identical, but or close to it or something. One
actor listed for both, so I think it was just a case of different haircuts that in a pair of glasses did a lot of work. If they tell you Clark Kent doesn't work to disguise Superman, I tell you, look at these 2 kids, it works.
But surprisingly though, I shouldn't say surprisingly, but I thought that they did a really good job. I was pretty impressed with the kids' performance.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the reasons why people are almost disappointed with the structure, is that it's almost disappointing to leave the kids behind because they're actually kind of compelling in the way it's told. Because the narration almost feels like a horror movie version of like a, I don't know, like a Sandlot or does A Christmas Story have that sort of narration where it's like an adult like narrating their childhood?
Well, I mean, probably the most apt comparison would be like Stand By Me. Because that's another, King story.
Oh yeah. I saw it once, but I don't remember it well enough to remember that it had narration, so I didn't think of that example. But yeah, it's got that kind of vibe, and it just slightly obviously skewed towards horror.
And I think one thing, I really enjoyed the dynamic between the two. Like, they're very antagonistic. Like the, quote unquote, like, cool twin or slightly older twin by or whatever.
The 3-minute older twin Bill is a little shit.
Yeah, but it makes for like a fun dynamic, and like you definitely want to see their comeuppance. But then once they do the time skip, I guess without being too spoilery, but we're mostly following Hal by himself like for a good while. Which not that he's a bad character or anything, but I was missing that like relationship between the two. Yeah,
and this movie has a couple of surprising like one scene guest actors. One right at the start and then one in the middle after we have the time skip. But they're only in the one scene and then they never come back again. But I guess that's just the example of Perkins is built some connections in his career. And we can't say it's because of nepotism. It's not because he's his father, because his father's been dead for decades. These actors that he got to guest star were probably not even well, they were born. Yeah, they were definitely born. They're old enough to have been born by the time we got to like the start of the 90s, but still, because they're both older than me. But still, so that's kind of interesting as well. Tatiana Maslany plays the mother, who we see as a sort of really prominent character during the childhood portion of the movie. Yeah, I think, you know, the deaths are good. I mean, you did say it's a bit CG at times, and I did notice that. I did feel that for some of the death, and some of them it was unavoidable because of what the death was. But
yeah,
but it's the sort of thing where, like, I guess we like have to accept at this point that if they're doing certain types of death, regardless if they've got the budget to do the CG and look like spectacular, they're going to do it anyway, just because we're in this era now where that's what you do. You just use CG to do the thing. And because you've got a cool idea where the head does this, or the body splats like that, they're just going to do it. So it's just something we have to accept for the most part.
Yeah, and I think I'm a little more forgiving in something like this, where you're obviously doing stuff that would be hard to do practically. And also, you know, it's mostly for comedic effect, so I'm not like, you know, it's not taking me out of the moment because it's like, oh, that could have been really creepy, but then the CGI ruined it or whatever. Like, you know, it's a little bit of a different scenario.
Yeah, for sure. So, as far as anything else before we get into spoilers, I do want to reiterate that it is pretty good and it's pretty solid. It's funny. The deaths are fun. It just never quite reaches that special level, and you know, it's missing just that final ingredient that just gets it over the edge into great territory. But you know, I would watch it again, like that. I mean, which is about as best compliment I can give to most like modern horror movies when I see them.
Yeah, I think this will be a fun one to like show to people if you're, you know, hanging out and you're like, oh, you haven't seen that yet, like let's throw it on. And because like you were saying with the theater experience, it was fun kind of having those shared moments of like everyone being surprised or going like, oh man, so I think it's a good one to watch. I just completely forgot what else I was gonna say. So
my cat's got the zoomies, so I'm being distracted by that.
Oh, of course.
So I need you to carry the show. So this is a very unfortunate moment to completely shit the bed, Tim.
All right. Well, I can bring this little guy out if you want to.
Oh
see.
No! What? For the audio listeners, Tim's holding a little drummer monkey that he's got.
Be careful! I'll raise a hand. If you say something I don't like, this hand's going down.
The boy sucks.
Oh. You watch out. Yeah, I love this thing, but I am way too embarrassed to say how much it costs. That was one of the reasons why I went on down to an AMC, because I knew they're selling the monkey popcorn bucket, and I had to have it.
Is that what that is? That's actually something you bought as merchandise for this movie? Yeah. I thought this was just something, your kid happens to have this stupid thing. No, okay, very good.
My kids do love it, though. They love playing the drums. My wife told me that I have to, keep it out of eyesight because she thinks it's creepy. But the kids love it. They've been banging away on it. No one's died yet, though. Luckily.
Yet. All right, let's get to the spoilers, shall we? We'll talk about the monkey. So you've been warned, full spoilers for the monkey, as always. So, yeah, Adam Scott's in the opening of this movie. That was a surprise.
Yeah, I did not expect that.
Yeah, it's very disconnected as well, because as much as there's enough like mentioned about him to understand that this is the father of the two kids. If it wasn't for the fact that he was wearing a pilot jacket, and then they had a pilot's jacket in the closet, like this could have even just not been their dad. This could have just been someone who had the monkey like a couple of people ago, for all we knew. But actually, one of the things that I'll mention here is see this stuff in the flashbacks, or the it's weird to call it a flashback because it's like an entire section of the movie. But Did it feel like 1999 to you in this stuff?
Not this opening scene, like.
Yeah, the opening didn't. Yeah, but I just mean, because to me the whole thing felt like it was further back than that. Like, don't get me wrong, when you actually look to, like, you know, the video game console he was playing or things they referenced, yeah, they did reference stuff from 1999, but the actual aesthetic felt like it was the 70s or something to me. I don't know.
So, I might have an answer for that. Because I listened to a couple of podcasts where they're talking about it. So, I'm getting the second hand. So, you know, if it's wrong, you know, whatever. But
this information might be useless, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Right, brace yourselves.
So I heard in like an early version of the script that the flashback was actually going to take place in the 50s, I think, and then the modern day stuff was going to be in the 80s, or, you know, whatever the majority of the movie was going to be like in the 80s. But then I think they decided that I don't know, that might like seem too similar to maybe like some of the other stuff, or I don't know if the 80s was just like you know, overdone or whatever, but basically they decided to change it. But the thing that's interesting though is it doesn't seem like they changed the music choices, because I think there was still like a kind of like a more old-timey like doo-woppy kind of like, you know, score. So I don't know if that like added to it.
Yeah, I guess that, and even the narration, because a lot of these movies where I think of like an adult narrating their childhood, they're all period pieces. They all take place, and part of it's when they were made, but like The Sandlot, like that came out in the 90s, so the story that most of the movie takes place in, because it's an adult looking back at his childhood, is like the 60s. So, you know, like, I don't know, like, just everything about the opening chunk felt older than 1999. I was like, almost, like, it was like almost disconnect where I'm like, okay, if I'm really paying attention to the clothes, yeah, okay, I guess it is the 90s, but everything about this feels like it's shooting for an older vibe. But obviously when it goes to present day and they've all got smartphones and stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, all right, I guess this is just that, and maybe that's the weirder thing about the fact that this is a pretty close time parallel to my own life, where I'm like, I was in 1999. This feels a little bit more old school than that, but yeah, no, whatever.
I get that. There's something about the house that maybe it's just different than like houses I remember as a kid. Like, I mean, despite the fact that they had like, you know, Goosebumps posters and stuff on the wall, but yeah, like something about it did seem a bit more old fashioned. But I mean, maybe they were going for that. Like, I'm not sure where it took place. It felt more like the Midwest. Like, I know eventually they moved to Maine, but I don't know if they were like somewhere else before then.
I don't know. One state over, probably. King stories can't stray too far from Maine. It's just part of the rules. No. Honestly, knowing Stephen King's attachment to setting all of his stories in Maine, when that road sign popped up when they were moving, I laughed. I audibly laughed because of course we're going to Maine. I'm surprised we're already in Maine.
Yeah. There was I mean, as a King fan, like I do enjoy any type of like you know, little Easter egg or reference in the movies. This one did have a really weird reference in it, which I'm curious if you caught.
Well, I mean, not off the top of my head right now. Maybe we're talking about the scene though. But go on, yeah.
Well, I can go into it now, or if you want, I can bring it up when we.
I just hit me with it now. What is it? Maybe I did, and I didn't realize it was a reference.
So, did you recognize the name of the babysitter?
The babysitter, babysitter Annie.
Yeah, her. And then when they're at the funeral, they give her full name, which is Annie Wilkes, which is.
Oh yeah, that's Misery, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which, like, I don't know. To me, that's just like that's a very strange like nod, because it's like it's not like that like some character offhandedly mentions like, hey, remember that person Annie that did that crazy thing or whatever. It's like, oh no, you're literally naming this character the same as another character, which I don't know. I found that to be a little bit of an odd reference.
I mean, I think it's just a little nod, especially since they never like overly point it out, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
It's not like a major character or anything, so I get it. But I mean, Misery is such like a big book, though. Like, it's not like they're naming an obscure character that people might not recognize.
I mean, what would you prefer? They just throw in the name as a nothing but a cute reference, or they do something that where they think they're being clever, where they say she's like, you know, maybe change the first name, and like there's a suggestion that, oh, this is the little sister of Annie Wilkes who did that thing to the writer.
Yeah.
You know, because that's basically what Castle Rock, the TV show, did with a lot of stuff. Is like, you know, because I remember Jane Levi's character being like, oh, her uncle's meant to be Jack Torrance from The Shining. I want to say, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that was right. There's a decent amount of stuff I liked in the first season of Castle Rock, but there was also a lot of stuff like that made me groan. And then that Jane Levi thing in particular was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, I mean, I don't mind the odd reference here or there. It's just, to me, it's just weird to give the character the same name as a very major character.
Do you know what, Tim? I think I would be on board with complaining about this if this movie was littered with weird Stephen King references, but to be honest,
sure.
I don't think it is. I did not feel like I was being referenced constantly. No. Just one, whatever. They can have their one, unless you want to count the main thing as a reference. But to me, that's more like Arnold saying, "I'll be back." You have to. Of course, it's there. You just accept that it's a constant. So yeah. Opening prologue is Adam Scott, who's trying to give the monkey back to like a pawn shop. And this pawn shop has lots of weapons on display, including like a deep sea diver suit holding a harpoon gun. I think, honestly, people saying it was like a comedic Final Destination might have even like set me up for the wrong thing, because this scene does kind of fit that vibe, but I would say a lot of the deaths after this do not fit that vibe, because while there's like random deaths, they don't all do the like, oh, what's going to kill them? Is it going to be a chain reaction of things that are going to, you know, eventually like do the person in? But this one kind of has that, because there's a little bit of like a knock-on effect that eventually fires the harpoon gun that kills the pawn shop owner. But yeah.
I feel like Final Destination, it'll usually be like multiple beats where it's like, yeah, this thing will do that, which will trigger this, which will make this thing fall, which will hit this, which will then do this, which will then be a fake out, and then the person will die because of this.
That's what I was going to jump in and say, is all the things you're just saying leads to something that doesn't kill them, then something else kills them.
Yeah. It's like, whereas here, it's more like maybe just 2 beats, where it's like, this thing hits this thing, which hits a person.
Yes.
So it's like similar to Final Destination, but I don't know, cut in half or something.
Which maybe even is a conscious choice to just not be Final Destination. I'm not sure, but I mean, some of them definitely were meant to be quick. There's obviously a couple. You know, the shotgun from the closet later on. That was clearly meant to be a quick shock surprise.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like, that works, and you know, and the physics are comical. Like, you know, people explode in this movie when I'm pretty sure the people would not explode in real life.
Yeah, I think that might be my favorite death, is the pool diving scene.
Yeah.
Like, that really got me.
Oh yeah, it was funny. It was great. That later on, like when the main character's at a motel and he's on the phone to his brother, like there's a little bit of a Final Destination set up to like, oh, this puddle of water's at his feet and this electrical cable's like getting ready to dangle or whatever. And basically the electrical cable hits the little puddle of water and he stepped out of it, so he's fine. But he notices that it's like that puddle of water's connecting all the way to the edge of the pool. And this woman who's just about to dive in, he yells out no. She dives, and then, again, pretty sure this is not how electrocution works, but as soon as her body hits the water, she just explodes into a rain of blood that hits everything.
I think you see like an arm or a leg go flying.
Yes.
Like
yeah, because he has a line where he's like, "Is that a leg?"
Yeah, that just really got me, because like I expected. Yeah, she would jump in and then do like an electrocution thing where she's like, oh, blah, 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 or, you know, whatever. But I did not expect it to just explode.
Because that could still be pretty cartoony if she's like really hamming it up and be like, you know, doing the shock. But she just explodes on impact.
And another thing that too was kind of getting me was just how like and I'm just thinking this in my head now, so I don't know if there's maybe something more to it here, but it does feel like there's maybe a bit more weight with the deaths when they're younger. I mean, obviously it's like people that they know more, but you see like, you know, the funeral and them being sad and stuff. But if you compare that to the deaths when they're older, they're just like so like nonchalant about it, which I guess you would be at a point if that many people keep dying around you. But it was making me laugh at certain points where it's just like, this person dies and, you know, it's just kind of like, come on, you know, versus oh my god, I can't believe I just saw that.
I mean, that's what I was getting at earlier when I was talking about how like a lot of the deaths after a certain point are just people who are nothing characters, who are just there to be killed, and that's fine to a point. Like, I mean, the realtor lady with the shotgun in the closet when she's showing them the house, like that's like funny and it's fine, but like I think you just hit on something there. In that opening chunk of the movie when they're kids, people that they know or are close to are dying, and there's like kind of almost like a threat of death happening. But it feels like when they're adults, the threat of the monkey is like, yeah, obviously we never wanted it to come back, and we're scared of who might die, but it feels like it's not as tangible because no one who's actually close to Hal actually ever really suffers in the back half. So, whereas in the first half, it's like, oh, okay, the babysitter snuffs it, and that's like someone we knew, and it was horrific because we saw it, and we had to go to the funeral, so we see the fallout of the death. And that even becomes funny as in of itself because, you know, the mum dies, of course, right? And that's like a big traumatic thing, and that feels like a big deal. It's an inciting moment for a lot of character motivations for later in the film. And it does feel like a big deal because she feels like a main character. It feels like a big death, and it really shows that, oh, there's consequences to turning this thing on that's unforeseen. You can't predict who it's going to go after, and that's a big deal. So it feels like it hits really hard. But even when it turns, even when it turns funny though, right? And they do that thing where they move with their aunt and their uncle. The uncle played by Osgood Perkins with ridiculous sideburns. Again, this is something else that made it feel like it was in the 70s because he looks like he's an Elvis fan.
That's true.
From like that time period.
And it even talks about being like a swinger and stuff, which feels more like a 70s thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they still exist, Tim, but yes.
Right. But I feel like people weren't like bragging about it as much.
But he, like, they do like a thing where we don't even see his death, but they do like a really funny cut where they're like, hey, no, we can't turn it, someone else is going to die, don't do it. And then it cuts like mid-sentence as he's trying to convince his brother not to turn the key in the back of the monkey, and it just cuts to his photo at the funeral. And that was a funny cut. Like, it was like, but it still had a bit of impact because it was a character we'd set up, and it kind of felt like everyone these two kids come in contact with is like doomed to die because of this monkey. But when we go to them in present day, and Hal's just been living kind of a loner life for like 30 years because he's too like, I don't know, like, oh, everyone close to me dies, even though the monkey's been missing for 30 years, and clearly no one has died in his life in that time. Well, at least in a bizarre circumstance as a result of a monkey, anyway. So I think there is maybe like a lack of like tangible, real characters we care about that are. And the closest, of course, is the threat of, oh, okay, he has a son now. He has a son who's a teenager, and he cares about him. He's kind of estranged because he tries to keep his distance from him. They're spending this time together. And I think I like some of like their relationship, and it's kind of funny. But I don't think I ever really felt like, oh, the teenager son's in danger, and I'm worried about him kind of thing. Like, I never felt that to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's good enough to give the character, like, motivation and everything, but yeah, I wouldn't say I ever like latched onto him or was, you know, super rooting for the relationship or whatever.
I think it works better when it's been funny. Like, see moments where like Hal will lie to his son Petey. That's his name, Petey. Like, he'll lie to him, like his son like is like, hey, you abandoned me for whatever reason, and he doesn't even really know why he get abandoned. Like, we know that Hal abandoned him because he's worried that he's going to die because he's cursed. Again, he's not really cursed though because the monkey's not around, but you know, that's another debate, I suppose. But there's a whole bit where he's like, hey, Dad, do you have any siblings? Which is an insane thing for a teenager to have to ask their parent. You know, like, that's something that should have came up at some point. But he's like, do you have any siblings? And he lies and says, no, I have no siblings. And then when they meet this like lady who's dealing with the house of the aunt who's now died in the present day part of the movie, and she's the one that dies with a shotgun blast, she just happens to mention, oh, I spoke to your brother, Hal, and he said this. And the son's sitting there and hears it all and, like, you know, calls him out on it and makes a bit of a scene over it. Right, that wasn't particularly funny in and of itself, but the bit that really got me to laugh was that when they go into the house, there's a moment where Petey's looking at like the photo of the two kids on the wall, and he just goes, "They're effing twins!" Like that made me laugh. There's lines like that really stuck out to me as like, okay, it's nailing kind of the running gag of like Petey just discovering things about his dad that we've known like the entire movie, but somehow he's just been kept in the dark by. It was genuinely actually kind of funny at a point where it was almost like fun when he found out something else or whatever. But I do almost think it maybe takes too long because the like Hal doesn't even see the monkey again until the final like climax. You know, he never even gets to see it again until that point. So that's maybe also part of why I felt like like it didn't ramp up enough in that last half. But anyway, let's stick in the first chunk for a bit though, shall we? Let's talk about their time as kids. We'll talk about the deaths, which we could kind of hit on. Yeah, on you go. My brain's rattled. Did we even end up saying what happens in the beginning to the shopkeeper? Or I mentioned the harpoon. I feel like we started talking. Yeah, I think I quickly mentioned the harpoon eventually fires and goes into him, but I guess I did not mention that it pulls back out and pulls all his intestines out. Yeah, because that's like the harpoon firing like was pretty cool already, but then like just the little cherry on top of it slowly pulling back and just his intestines just pulling out was really great. Yeah, I think what's so funny to me is that I kind of expected Adam Scott to like maybe show up again or like to get another flashback or something, just purely because it is kind of left open to us exactly what happened, because obviously the prologue like ends with him noticing there's a flamethrower in this pawn shop, because that's something pawn shops have sitting around. And you know, the before the title screen, he's like, you know, die you son of a bitch, and he's like firing the flamethrower at the monkey in the alleyway, and it's this big over the top scene, and it's like, okay, this is setting a tone, and I was appreciative of that, because it felt like, okay, this is setting me up for pulp. It's not setting me up for something that's going to take itself super seriously. And then of course we meet the kids, and it's like, hey, our dad left when we were super young, we never really met him, he was a pilot. This monkey's in a box in the cupboard. And I'm like, okay, so we don't really know how the dad's story ended, because clearly the monkey didn't get destroyed from this. So did the dad die because someone else wound the monkey up? Did he just run away? Like, it's actually kind of open and never really addressed, like, exactly the circumstance of when he left and why he left. Yeah, if I had to assume, I would think that he, you know, similar to how Hal feels as an adult, he probably leaves because he thinks it's the safest option, that, you know, as long as I'm around, this thing will be around too. Well, it is kind of thematically makes sense, don't get me wrong, because Hal's whole character arc is that he needs to like stop thinking that and take responsibility and be a dad. Like that's the character story of the movie, right? Is that he's got this convenient excuse to keep his distance from his son, and his son, who I feel like, to be honest, is at an age where I feel like most teenagers would stop giving a shit by that point, but he's like making an effort to try and like have a relationship with his father, who is just not interested because he wants to like keep his distance. So yeah, I think the subtext of the movie absolutely is what you're getting at there. It's like, yeah, that's kind of what it's about. But just in terms of actual, like, you know, I mean, especially if the excuse is, hey, I need to stay away because this monkey's going to be around me, then why leave the monkey? Take the monkey with you. Guard it so no one can use it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if maybe he... I mean, again, I'm getting a lot of stuff that's not in the movie, but, you know, if he burns his shop down thinking that, like, destroys the monkey and then
but I don't know if it like shows up again and then he realizes that like he'll never be rid of it or something. But I mean, it could also be that if someone used the monkey and then it killed him and they just never discovered the body or something. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
What I think is kind of interesting though is, him and the other big like guest star that I wasn't really expecting. Neither one of them get like on-screen deaths, which I think that would be like part of being like a almost like a cameo or whatever in the movie would be like, oh, like, yeah, if I'm gonna be in here, like, let me get a cool death or something.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, to be fair, the other one is Elijah Wood, and he is memorable because he's got a super comedic role. Sure. He is the stepdad of Petey. This is like, Hal's ex. I mean, I don't know if Hal and her were ever like married or anything, but obviously we're at least a couple for a brief time. And yeah, Elijah Wood plays like this, what do you call it? Like a new age, like basically he's written a book about parenting and like the Zen art of parenting, which he references when he's talking to Hal, where he's like, "Oh, I just took your energy, and I'm an expert in this field. I've written a book on parenting." And literally says, "Oh, I'm legally adopting your son so that you won't even see him once a year anymore." Which, even if he was legally adopted, I'm not so sure that takes away the previous like father's rights to see their kids. I could be wrong on that, but I don't feel like it would take that right away. But
yeah, I'm not sure how it works. I mean, maybe it gives them more like ammo if they want to go to court and like take away visitation rights, but I feel like, as long as the, father isn't like a threat or, dangerous in some way, that he would at least have like some minimal rights,
I mean, especially in this case where the father has actively tried to stay away from him as much as possible. It's like he, it's the opposite of a threat. The threat, if anything, is of abandonment. If anything, you're making the situation worse by like forcing his hand and saying, "Hey, no, what little content you do want to have, we're going to block and take away." Which what's funny about that is that during that entire section we hadn't met Petey yet. We'd heard that he's got a son, and we're having this conversation with the new stepdad character, who's this like douchebag, like I don't know, not cult leader. He's not a cult, but like he's got that kind of vibe. Is that the entire time, because of the way they were talking about it and the way that the mum was saying, "Hey, this is bad for him and he's going to ruin him because he's going to feel all these things," I was expecting like a 7 or 8 year old or someone who was the same age at least as the kid in the like when they were kids.
Oh, sure.
But when we saw what age he was and he's like 15, 16, I thought, I feel like at this point it's not going to like make a difference. He's already like had most of his childhood. Like. Mm-hmm. Like doing this now isn't going to make him forget that he had an actual dad who abandoned him. Like the damage of like the argument to cut him out of the life as a kid would be like, okay, if we do it early enough, he won't have all these traumatic memories of like wishing that his dad was there. Like he'll forget about him because he'll grow up and like that'll. But at this age, it's like he's going to remember all this. Like this isn't going to like solve any of those issues. So I don't know. I'm not even complaining. I'm just brain farting out my thoughts.
Yeah, he's like old enough that he can like start asking questions like why his dad only sees him for like once a week every year and all this stuff, which I'm sure he's probably like asked some of those questions beforehand. For me, I don't know. I think maybe the issue for me is that I'm just not as interested in the father-son relationship as I am the brother relationship. Like to me, the story, is about these two feuding brothers. So, like again, Petey, it doesn't feel as much as a character as just like he's basically just motivation for, to I guess give Hal like a reason to, want to protect him and stuff, and get the monkey from his brother. So maybe that's why that stuff just kind of doesn't work, or I wasn't as into it.
Yeah, like I say, it works for laughs, and I get the motivation. Like, and to be honest, I think the movie wants it to be a more central thing because, like, I feel like his character arc is very much, in part, like not abandoning his son like his father abandoned them, like because he's basically repeating the same mistakes that kind of messed him up. Anyway, no, I said we were going to stay in the opening chunk, Tim, and we keep jumping ahead.
It's hard.
So, yeah, the babysitter dies when she's because the mom's trying to go on a date, so the babysitter takes the kids. Sorry, Garrus. He wants snuggle time. It's not a good time, cat. So they go to one of those, like, the chef cooks the meal on the table in front of you kind of restaurants.
Benihana, I think.
Or is it just one chain that does it?
I mean, Benihana is like the, big famous one.
Yeah.
It's the more well-known one.
I mean, I don't want to say it doesn't, like, I mean, that chain doesn't exist here, I'm pretty sure of that, but, like, I don't want to say this type of restaurant doesn't exist here, but I have never seen, this is something I've only ever seen in American movies and TV.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I know they exist out here, but I've never actually been to one.
Yeah. But yeah,
I might have been to, like, a restaurant where they maybe had a section like that, but I've never actually, like, sat there and gotten the food.
Yeah, so basically the babysitter is kind of eyeing up the chef, and the chef's kind of eyeing up her, and this is making Bill kind of jealous because Jill's got a crush on her. But when he's like doing all these fancy like knife chopping tricks, he ends up slicing her her head off. Which this is an interesting one compared to some of the other deaths, because it's like, okay, it's one thing when the monkey makes like an object like move or do something to kill someone, but he's also traumatized this man here, because this man now is going to live the rest of his life thinking that he's like he is never going to do this job again. He is going to be like scared of ever holding a knife in his hand.
Well, he's obviously going to be fired.
I would think so. Yes.
I mean, I don't know if it's possible like you could go to jail for something like this. Like, obviously he didn't intend to do it, but I don't know if there's like some criminal negligence or something they could hit him with. If not, I'm sure the family could sue him into like oblivion. How
many customers has he served, and he killed one? That's not like thousands. Yeah, only one true. Death. I mean, as far as brutality rates go, that's. I mean, arguably, it should be zero, but
yeah. But I mean, to me, like the best part about this is, the head actually falling off, and then like falling on, like the grill or whatever you call that, like, part of the table where they cook the food, and then you just see it like laying there and like cooking and bubbling. Was like a nice little effect.
Yeah. And that, leads to our first funeral where the kids have to go and get dressed up, and it's a whole thing.
This was one of the comedic things that I think was a bit of a miss for me, is like, I didn't really care for this, like, I don't know, like young stoner priest or whatever at the funerals.
Do you know what's funny is when he walked in and just sort of looked at the body and said, "Oh, F," that actually got the biggest laugh in the cinema. Of any joke was just his reaction to that.
It's weird because in a movie with a lot of unbelievable stuff, like, I still found that kind of unbelievable that this guy would be like so like flippant or out of it or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's credited as rookie priest, so I think they were going for he's the young priest is struggling, and he gives like a terrible speech where he's just kind of like, it is what it is. That's God's will. It is what it is.
Which is kind of, I mean, honestly, it's kind of like the central theme of the movie, which is like, as crazy as this stuff is, it's just kind of like, there's this underlying sentiment that's like, well, that's life. Like, people die. You can't help it. Like, sometimes it's in crazy ways.
Yeah.
Like, even the, when they first open the box of the monkey, it says, like, instead of saying life like, it says like life, which is just saying like, oh, yeah, like, it's just like life, it'll disappoint you, and people will leave you when you don't want them to, or in unexpected ways.
Yeah.
The mom gives a much better like speech about that.
Yeah, she gives a big speech after the funeral, and Hal in his narration notes that this ended up, like, he remembers this is the best day of his life because he went dancing with his mum afterwards. She took them dancing, which You know, and I get maybe that's also part of why the back half suffers a little bit from a character perspective, is that the relationship with the mum, like it's a big deal when she dies, right? And obviously, like the idea that like Hal keeps getting bullied by his brother, and his brother's even enlisted an entire group of mean girls at school to bully him. Like that was one of the bits of humor that really worked for me actually, is when Hal walks into the lockers room and there's like just like 6 girls and they're like standing like a gang from like a 50s movie, like waiting for him and like demand that he take his pants off. Like that was funny. Or when they're walking towards him just holding a big box of bananas, because he's got a reputation now for having this monkey, because the monkey keeps appearing in his backpack or whatever at school. Like that stuff is funny, but it leads to the motivation where he really wants to like kill his brother. So he turns the monkey key and hopes it's going to kill him, but instead it kills the mum. So there's giant consequences, and it's like obviously he is traumatized, and he learns that like, oh, I should never have done that. I should never do this ever again. Which is a big difference between him and Bill, because when they're adults, and Bill wants to keep turning the key to try and kill his brother over and over again, because Bill in time realized, wait, my brother must have turned the key. He killed my mum. I'm not happy about that. He's obviously much worse as a character because he's an adult making this choice and he knows that it's going to kill someone for sure. Whereas when Hal does it, yeah, he's kind of thinking it's going to kill someone, but he's, like, it's only happened once, so it's not like a guarantee. And he's also a child, so you can kind of forgive the choice he's making a little bit as you know, immature and, you know, not all there. Whereas Bill as an adult is just a maniac who just wants to keep turning the key over and over again.
Yeah. And also he's just constantly being like, you know, his life is miserable because of his brothers. So, you know, again, obviously it's an extreme reaction to want to kill him, but you can see how, you know, he gets pushed to that level versus when they're adults, like, you know, they don't even like talk to each other anymore. Like Hal really doesn't have any effect on his life. Like, again, you know, he's traumatized by his mom, so that makes sense. But it, you know, it's not like Hal's constantly making his life miserable the way he, you know, was.
Yeah, I mean, they've not even seen each other in like over 5 years when we like start off the story and the present day part of the movie, which, you know, I think it, yeah, like maybe part of the problem is that the kid relationship was a bit more compelling than the adults was, but then you've also got the mum who's a very likable character to try to kind of look after them, and the tone is maybe just works a little bit better when they're kids. Once we like jump ahead to the adult time, I think a lot of the characters they add into the story, some of them are just there to die, of course, but there's a whole like set of characters. There's like a guy who actually finds the monkey at the like the yard sale after the ant gets killed, and the ant has a big death, of course. The ant has this big death where the monkey like comes back for the first time, and she ends up like getting her head set in because she basically like her face gets all caught in fish hooks, so she puts rubbing alcohol all over her face. So when she ends up getting a flame on her face, her head just ignites in flame, right? The idea being that the rubbing alcohol's made her head flammable. And then she runs around daft until she runs outside the house and runs straight into the for sale sign that's got like a pointy edge, and it goes right through her head. My favorite detail of this is actually not in the death itself. It's later on when Petey and Hal are at the house. If you look at the ceiling, you can actually see like a scorch mark get all the way across the ceiling. And I thought that was a really nice detail they sort of kept in for a later scene. But yeah, they introduce this character who finds the monkey and gets it at the yard sale. And we see like his home life where he's got like a brother who's just always sitting in a military uniform, and a mum who's just kind of depressed and sitting there and talking about how her husband left her in the same way that Maslany talked about how her husband left. And it kind of felt a little bit weird to focus on these characters. Like I thought they were going to be more important, and they like he kind of isn't. Like he ends up wanting the monkey back because it makes him think of his father. So he ends up being like this extra antagonist in the third act, but he's so underdeveloped that I found myself, and the motivation is so weak. Like, yeah, it fits into the themes because he wants it because it's about an abandoned father, which obviously ties into what the main characters have been, you know, all about the entire movie. But it just felt like such a weak excuse to have a character force the main character to go to his brother at gunpoint in the third act. Plus, it was bugging me what I knew this guy from. It turned out he was the main guy in Halloween Ends. he's got long hair here, so it took a while, but that was him.
Yeah. It's weird. It feels like he could have been an interesting character, but again, it doesn't feel like we get enough into it or something, and it just ends up feeling more like a plot device to get them to where they need to go.
Yeah, because the main character has no interest in confronting his brother. He just wants to leave with his son, get out of Dodge, and because maybe that would have been like the heroic thing, would have been like, oh, he's going to keep using that monkey, so we have to go and confront him to save people's lives. That would have maybe been something we could have rooted for in the character, but he just wants to run away, pretty much. Yeah. It's not until he's forced at gunpoint by this other weirdo who just wants the monkey back. And when he goes because we see him try to get the monkey back, he goes to Bill, who's got like a big hotel that he's bought, that he's got like all these locks and booby traps on, and he's just talking over the intercom. He's like, nope, sorry, I hired you to find the monkey. And I'm like, wait, you hired him to find the monkey? Okay. It doesn't really need an explanation or anything, but it's like, okay, that's a weird detail to throw in, that he actually had people looking for it all this time. Like for all these years, just lying in wait so he could use it to kill his brother. And at a certain point, I genuinely thought, would it not just be quicker to just kill your brother? Like, you want to murder him anyway, just murder him. I honestly, when we actually got to older Bill, and he's like this crazier version of the main character, and he's modified his suit from going to the funerals, because he has a line early
detail.
Yeah, because he had a line early on where he said, I need to keep this suit on because there's going to be another funeral eventually, so I'll just keep wearing it. So he's modified his childhood suit to fit him as an adult, but it doesn't obviously fit him. There's like extra bits tacked onto it to sort of cover the rest of his body.
I love like how much of a loser he is as an adult. Like it's that very like, you know, classic thing of, oh yeah, like a nerd and a bully, and then they grow up and it's like, oh, it looks like the nerd's actually doing like, you know, pretty okay, and then the bully is just like can't get over, you know, his childhood, and he has like a dumb haircut, and he's like modified his suit from a kid, so he just looks like so ridiculous. But I think it does make like a very like interesting villain. Like that's why I really was definitely getting, like, when they first go to them as adults, I do feel like slipping a little bit, even though we're still having fun. But then I did start to perk up like once we actually start seeing Bill as a grown up and stuff too.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on him, to be honest, because once we go to him, I think because we'd been away from him for so long, and he's such a kooky character, it really felt like there was a lot more development they could have done with him to make him feel like... I think we should have been seeing Bill like the entire time as soon as we jumped to adults. I think we should have been seeing him and developing who he was, because by the time we got to him and he had like a super villain lair with all these like TVs stacked on top of each other, it felt like he's this maniacal villain from like a spy movie or even a superhero movie. Like he's the bad guy who's like crazy, and it just kind of felt so wild to me that I was like, wait, this is how we're ending this movie? His brothers went crazy and we're like got into his evil lair to try and not have him like, you know, use the monkey anymore. And by this point, the monkey has been turned every day, so all these weird deaths have been happening in the town. That's why the realtor dies. It's why the woman in the pool dies. A couple others they mentioned. We don't see a ton of them, but we do see in the town at this point that a lot of like just random crazy things are happening. Some of which is after the climax, some of it's before. But like we see a plane go down. We see like a woman with like a baby carriage that's just on fire, just running through the street, and just. There's like a guy impaled in a tree that's clearly been there for like a couple of days. There's just
like with a surfboard.
With a surfboard, yeah. It's just all these crazy things. I will say there is one that I do like, the payoff they did. Early on when they're just in this town, Petey mentions that he got a leaflet for skydiving lessons that you can do here. Right. And he mentions that they even do weddings. Apparently that's a thing where some people get married in the sky because they think that sounds cool. And the payoff to that is that during the climax when they're with Bill, and this plane comes down and we see it like crash somewhere in the town, the bride of like a wedding like comes crashing through the ceiling and is just dangling there in her wedding outfit. So I thought that was a funny payoff to like, because they set that up. They set up that there was like a plane that did skydiving marriages. So here it is. Here's a bride that met a fateful end.
Yeah, like and I'm not sure if this is what they were going for, but this is the way I kind of interpreted it, was that like things have been going so crazy in this town that it's kind of like driving people insane, to the point where like people are now like cheering when people die, and like you see when they're like taking the body out, they have like a group of cheerleaders and stuff. They're like, they're bringing out the body, and everyone's like, yeah.
That was a weird detail. Obviously, that's there to set up the cheerleaders so we get our final shot at the end. But yeah, it's funny because like I feel like, yeah, it's trying to do something where, okay, the world's going crazy around them, and it's kind of like, yeah, the world's crazy, and all we have is each other, so this is why they should try and work things out. But I have to admit, because Bill's been so crazy and like intentionally killed a lot of people, when we get to the point where like Hal's reaching out his hand and saying, hey, let's be brothers again, like, you know, she was my mum too, let's like reconnect and be there for each other. And yeah, okay, it's funny that he does the whole like, you know, I won't shake your hand, I'll slick my hair back thing, which again is another very 50s feeling joke that made it feel like an older time period. But
I definitely knew kids that did that in school.
I don't know if I did. It feels like a much older school thing to me, but you know what? Sure. America, weird. But it almost felt like, you know what? No, he's too much of a, like, he's killed too many people. I can't really be on board with just, you know, rekindling with them. And I guess the movie is kind of like over the top and cartoony enough that maybe I shouldn't care about that. But it did feel a little strange to even sort of give him that little moment of redemption. Yes, he dies right after, when like the bowling ball that says Lois, his mum's name on it, like, you know, fires at his face and kills him and decapitates him. But it's, I don't know, like I think the like I see what the central themes are, and I see what they're trying to do here. This idea that this family's falling apart, the loss, like the father leaving, the death of the mother. Because if you take out all the horror stuff, you take out the monkey, you take out like why she died. The idea that she died of this freak, because this is the thing, and this is a very intentional choice. The mum doesn't have an over-the-top silly death. She's the only death that's not like this silly thing where something kills her or whatever. She just has like some kind of weird aneurysm, and she has this sort of, she turns round, she's bleeding from the ears and the nose, and she sort of says something like, I can't remember what the line was, but it was something like goodbye, or she, you know, it's like she's realizing she's dying. And it's kind of sad, right? It's played very straight, unlike all the other deaths, so it kind of has a bit more impact. So if you take out everything else and you just say, no, she dies of a freak illness, right, a freak aneurysm, and it leaves these kids on their own, and they have to, like, you know, put up with the weird aunt and the uncle, and they have to put up with whatever their life is going to come, and they become disconnected as a result. Like, you could just turn it into a drama almost of this family that's fallen apart. And then like this now, like this Hal is repeating the mistakes of the father. He's staying disconnected from his son, and ultimately through rekindling with his brother, it's making him realize that he has to be a better father. Like, I get the through line, like of what it's doing with everything, and all this crazy stuff on top is just to kind of accentuate it and whatnot. But I don't know if that heart ever really quite like came together for me, where I'm like, you know what, I feel that I can really feel something for what you're saying with these characters, and what this main character's sort of learning by the end to actually want to be there for his son.
I mean, I do feel like they are going for something, which is, you know, it's admirable that, there's something to that, but, I don't know, I feel like maybe it's overshadowed a little bit by the craziness of, like, the deaths and everything that's going on. And just the idea of, like, this is all being caused by this little monkey, and every time people are talking about, like, we got to get that monkey and stuff, like, it's just very silly and over the top. So, I don't know if that's an issue. Like, again, it doesn't ruin the movie or anything, but it just, maybe that stops it from, getting to that next level.
I think there's probably an insane balancing act where you could make all this land completely and keep all the silliness. But yeah, part of me does think that either go full silly and don't try and have quite as deep a character story that it's kind of going for and not quite hitting, or you go for the deeper character story but like tone the horror a bit more to fit what you're doing with that. But I do think it's admirable that there was an attempt here to try and do both. I just don't know if they both merged together completely for me. by the end, which is a shame. Just to mention the death, so the long-haired guy who wants the monkey, right, whose dad apparently was a police officer because he puts on his outfit and carries his gun. That's the gun that he uses to make Hal take Petey to Bill. His death is kind of like probably one of the worst ones, I thought, just because it's purely CG and not really that fun. Which is basically this like wasp nest like bursts open, and all the wasps, instead of just like swirling everywhere, they basically just go in like a straight line into this guy's mouth and then just kind of kill him from within.
Yeah, so maybe important to note, because this is one that again feels like a little Final Destination-y, I guess, because they're waiting in their car outside, the brothers' hotel or whatever, and as they're waiting, they just notice like this giant wasp or hornet's nest or whatever. You just kind of see it like bouncing on this tree branch, and like, oh, okay, so that's obviously gonna do something. And then I forget what happens with the guy, but he gets like scared or startled, so he shoots his gun off. And then that's like what causes at first it makes like a hole in the windshield, and then it goes through the nest, which riles all the wasps. So it does seem weird that they are targeted on that guy, but I mean, I'm guessing if maybe there's some explanation, it's if they somehow know that the gun or whatever that attacked their nest came from him, that's why they swarm him. But
that's a bit of a stretch, I think, but go on.
I mean, that's like the only explanation I could think of, but again, I don't think like it's a bad concept for the death, but yeah, it just ends up not looking that great.
Yeah, I think it's just I just don't think it was ever going to look good, so I just don't think I was ever going to really like this death all that much. But I mean, obviously they have the big joke death at the very end, which is after all this has happened and Hal is leaving with Petey in the car. And well, we'll talk about the other crazy thing that happens right before it. But like the final shot of the movie is there's like a school bus full of all those cheerleaders who are still cheering out the windows. But then this truck drives by right next to them and basically decapitates every single cheerleader as like the final joke before it cuts to the credits. Which, yeah, it's fun. It's a funny death. I almost think that it was a little bit weaker for me than it should have been, just purely because I watched the movie called Tag a few months ago, and there's kind of a similar but way more insane and like shocking, like, oh, a bunch of characters died very quickly on a bus scene. So I will say that dampened this a little bit for me, but it was funny though. It was a funny thing to go on.
Yeah, I'm very like sick of the trope of like, all right, someone's walking and then a truck comes, or a truck or a car or whatever comes out of nowhere and hits them. But this was at least like a little bit of a different angle on that, I feel like, because it's like, okay, I haven't seen like this exact take before. The one that really got me, we kind of mentioned it before, but the uncle's death. So he gets like trampled by all these stampeding horses while he's on a hunting trip, which is like fine, whatever. You see like a bunch of horses like running through over a sleeping bag. Like, it's not.
Well, just to be clear here, we see this kind of a little bit in flashback because, like I said, right. When they reveal that he's died, we just cut straight to the funeral for the comedy beat.
Yeah. So that death itself like isn't like it's whatever, it's fine. But then what really got me, and I forget how it's even brought up, but they talk about when they opened up the sleeping bag and it's just like this like goo liquid, like he's just so trampled that there's not even like a body anymore. That actually really got me.
It's what I imagine's in your sloppy joes, Tim. Because sloppy joes aren't a thing here. This is what I imagine a sloppy joe looks like. Is what he is in the sleeping bag.
That's probably pretty accurate. I've never been a sloppy joe guy. It's never been something that maybe I had one once or twice as a kid, but it always seemed unappealing to me. Like,
yeah, it's just not a thing
too
here.
Sloppy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of deaths, so I think we pretty much covered it. Like most of them, I think.
Yeah, I think we covered all the main ones for sure. Like I say, though, I think the in the first chunk of the movie, they all felt a bit more important and they all affected the characters in some way. Whereas in the back chunk of the movie, they're all kind of these ancillary characters who don't matter much. And I also think like the main character, he feels like, and I get his whole thing is that he is keeping his distance from his son, and he's trying to refuse to open up. Every time his son asks, like, hey, can I ask a question? He's like, no, I'd rather not bond. Like, that's basically how he reacts. But it does feel like once this guy shows up with a gun and threatens them, it feels like he just stays oddly calm. Like, he never, like if there was a time for him to kind of level up a little bit and start to, like, hey, stop pointing that gun at my kid, and, like, start to, like, really, like, show that he cared, that was the time for that to start.
Yeah.
And it kind of feels like he still just, you know, goes with the flow and doesn't commit to anything. And I think that's maybe the point where they should have made him start to react a little bit to make me care a bit more. But
that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. That was just something that really stuck out to me as well. Also, okay, so we have to talk about right before the ending, right before the school bus spot.
Oh wait, sorry. Actually, before we do that, the one other death I forgot about, which was his boss at work, which I actually thought was kind of a funny character. I got a chuckle when he was like asking for time off, and he just like kept saying like, what is it, like, oh man, that sucks. He's like, yeah, like I gotta go spend some time with my kid. He's like, you have a kid? He's like, yeah, I only see him like once a week. He's like, oh, that sucks. Like,
it was once a year for the record, not once a week.
Once a year. Sorry. But then, later on we see him. He like vapes or whatever, and I think he was a lot of these, like, I forget the actual setup, but I just remember like he ends up like choking on his.
Well, that's
vape.
very comical. He steps on a rake, and the
that's right.
And the rake hits the vape into his mouth, and it ends up being lodged inside of his neck.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If my memory is a little hazy, I did see this like at a like 10:15 showing, which of course with trailers and commercials was more like a 10:45 showing. So as much as I was enjoying it, I was getting a little sleepy during the film.
Yeah, I didn't really think much of that character, to be honest. It was almost really weird to me when we cut back to show him die, because I'm like, wait, we're going back to him? Like, he's not even, like, he had one scene with the main character and he's not been around since, but all right, sure. Why not? Because that was the thing. The early parts of the movie made me convinced that the monkey would always kill someone who was close to the main characters. Like, it'd always be someone they knew. Like, whoever turned the key, it'd be someone they knew. But of course, by the time you get to the second half of the movie, like, you know, like, Hal's not the one that turned the key, so the fact that his boss died is just, like, random, basically.
Maybe it's getting to the point where it has to kill so many people that it's just really stretching.
True, yeah. Everyone that Hal and Bill know have been killed. So really, in theory, it should have killed the other one by now. You know, like the brother that he's trying to kill, but for whatever reason, maybe because the monkey's latched on to both of them, it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, I mean, I guess, I suppose there's something to be said of this idea that, like, no matter what either of them did, either as a child or as an adult, they couldn't get rid of the other one, and that's maybe part of the theme of the movies, that, you know, your brother is there no matter what, and it's not until they actually meet up and make up a little bit, and it's maybe suggests that they're going to go over their issues, that one of them dies, and like the sort of tragedy of they didn't like use the time they had when they could have. I don't know, maybe there's something they're trying to get said there. I will say, as far as the writing goes, as much as it doesn't land as much for me as I wanted it to, I did think it was a smart choice, that the little moment between Petey and Hal where it feels like, oh, maybe they're going to finally start bonding like father and son, is when, you know, because we might be going to like a space theme park or something. Like, that was the plan on this trip before it got interrupted by all this death. You know, the son's saying, hey, we can still go do this thing or that thing. And Hal turns and says, let's go dancing. And he's like, dancing? Why'd you want to do that? And he's like, it comes from your grandmother. My mom took me dancing. And it's kind of like a nice little moment, because, like, you know, you remember back to that one happy moment he had after that funeral with the babysitter, where his mum took them dancing and he said it was the happiest day of his life. It works as a moment here because it's the first time he shared something with Petey that is about him and his family. It's like, hey, this is something I did with my mother and I really enjoyed doing it. So it's not so much that the dancing itself is important, it's more just that I'm revealing to you something that I cared about with her, and I'm going to try and maybe recreate that with you. So it felt like, okay, that was a nice little touch in the writing. As much as I don't think a lot of this character stuff hit with me towards the end. I think that choice for that to be the little nudge of, hey, maybe they're going to be okay. He's learned something here. I thought that was a nice way of doing it. And then a ghost walks by. A ghost on a horse just kind of walks past. And Tim, I don't... What? Why? Why is there a ghost?
Well, earlier in the movie, he says something along the lines of I am I've become like death, like a pale rider on a pale horse or something along those lines.
Oh yes, okay.
So I guess it's a callback to that, but I don't know necessarily why it ends up showing in the movie. Or what?
It was a weird thing because I didn't realize what it was at first. I just saw a guy on a horse, but then I sort of noticed, oh wait, there's like a mist coming off of him. What's going on?
There's so much crazy stuff going on that at first I thought it was like maybe a guy that was on fire on a horse or something, like that was like smoke or whatever. But then, it's just like, oh no, that just looks like a ghost or whatever.
It's just a ghost, and then the characters basically they act a little shocked, but then they just don't mention it. It's like, no, let's get on with the ending. All right, credits. Let's go.
I mean, at that point, there's so many like crazy over the top deaths that I kind of just roll with it. Like, it definitely caught me by surprise, but I was like, you know what, whatever, it's fine at this point.
I mean, I don't know what to say, to be honest. Honestly, it's weird because I never came out of the movie thinking, oh, I liked the first half more than the second half. But through talking about it, I'm realizing that I did, and that I think the first half is stronger. It
may be strange to say in like this movie, but it definitely feels more grounded.
It does. Like, I think it's also because you're looking at it through like the eyes of a kid almost, so it kind of makes anything crazy about that first half feel like it fits because you're seeing it through the eyes of someone who has an imagination, who is viewing the world in a very different way. Once we cut to like the adult version of Hal, everything's just kind of dour, and like I don't think the connection with his son ever quite lands emotionally. It is funny at points, like I say, like I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it ever fully comes together. And I think the rivalry with his brother feels a little bit weird to me because, like, I don't know, it doesn't quite feel earned. So I think it's a fun movie, and the deaths are a lot of good, really good throughout. But I think the plot, I guess I would say, in the back half sort of dwindles a bit and doesn't quite hit what I would want it to.
Oh no, I agree. I mean, maybe I might be slightly more positive, but not too far off. Like, I think this movie is a lot of fun, and, the deaths were pretty much always, like, entertaining. And, I liked a lot of the performances and stuff, but, there's just a little something missing there. Maybe that little extra feeling or something for the plot or the characters to make you care about them a little bit more that would have sent it over the top. So I still happy, still had a good time, would still recommend it, but unfortunately it's not like this crazy like home run, like, oh my god, like, we're gonna be talking about this movie for a long time, like people have to see it kind of thing.
I mean, it's weird. It's such a funny place where I think it's better than a lot of movies that we do on this show for sure. Like it has a very strong sense of direction. There are still times when I can tell it's Osgood Perkins directing it because of the way a scene will start, like with like a simple wide shot and the character will come into frame, and I'm like, oh, this feels like an Osgood Perkins scene. I can tell it's him, but obviously the tone is way different to every other movie that he's done.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, like this is like a pretty wild swing for him. I feel like, Long Legs was having a bit more funny things, but I feel like it was still, mostly serious. I mean, it's kind of surprising to see just like a full out comedy, from him.
Yeah.
Like, I can see this being from the person that made Long Legs, but, this would surprise me as being from the person that did like, Gretel and Hansel or Blackcoat's Daughter.
Yeah, the movie he's got coming up, by the way, is called Keeper. I just wanted to...
Oh, yeah, I mean, I don't know if they did it at your theater, but they actually showed, like, a little... I guess maybe just like a teaser trailer or something at the end of the movie for it. It really doesn't tell you much, but
Oh
I
no!
know.
Well, they might have done after the credits, but I was gone by that point.
Yeah, I mean, it really, wasn't much other than like a short trailer, I guess. But but it does look like Tatiana Maslany is in it as well. So.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Sounds like it'll be kind of her in a more starring role as well, because it's all about her character, by the looks of it. So that's cool. Yeah, alright, what was I going to say? Also, one bit of cast that I wanted to mention. The mum of like, the guy who has the gun in the later part of the movie, right? Because there's a whole scene with her, like, sort of complaining about her husband leaving her and whatnot and being depressed. That is Janet Kidder. And I noticed her name in IMDb, and I looked at her photo and went, you know what? She looks a little bit like Margot Kidder, actually. Like, is this like her daughter or something? And I clicked on her. It turns out it's her niece. It's Margot Kidder's niece. But just a weird. I mean, we already have Anthony Perkins' son directing the movie. I thought just some more weird connections to other actors. Who I've seen. Apparently, she was in Star Trek Discovery under a lot of makeup. But yeah, I don't know, just interesting.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. I didn't know it. And then yeah, it might be important to note too. Like I've seen like some people talking about like some Q&As and stuff that like Perkins has been doing, and it seems like I guess the reason why he wanted to do this movie and a lot of the I guess the thought behind it and stuff like was kind of coming from him and his family, and I think he said like part of it is like trying to showcase like these very outrageous like deaths, and I think because like I think he's kind of relating it to him like growing up and having parents that are very public figures who have both had like very kind of crazy public spectacle deaths. I didn't realize it. Like obviously I knew about his dad, but I didn't realize that his mom actually died in like 9/11.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's wild.
So I think part of this movie is like coming from him having these parents who both died in like very like big like
yeah, I mean
tabloidy kind of ways, I guess.
Yeah, his dad would have died around the age for him. I mean, like his age would have been because he was born in 83. So when did Anthony Perkins die? It was the start of the 90s, right? It was just after Psycho 4, I want to say.
Yeah. So yeah, because Psycho 4 was like early to mid 90s. So
that was 1990. It was right at the start.
Oh, right at the 90s.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So
I think it was like 94 or something. All right.
So he would have probably he'd have been under 10 when his dad died, and then his mum. I mean, he'd have been 18-ish when his mum died, which is it's still too young till he's a parent, to be honest. But it's
oh yeah, I mean any age, it's going to be tough. But yeah, I guess just there's something to unpack there about having famous notable parents and dying in like big news headline kind of ways.
No, yeah, not that the parents in this movie are like that. Just the idea of losing your parents and like how it's affecting you. And I mean, does he have? Yeah, he does. He's got a brother. So maybe his brother's name is Elvis Perkins. Okay, that has to be like an inspiration for the Elvis look that he has in this movie.
Yeah.
Elvis Perkins. Are you kidding me?
And then I believe, forget if you mentioned it, but his daughter's in the movie too. She's like one of in the girl gang or whatever. So
oh really? Oh,
a lot of family stuff going on. I guess she was in Long Legs too. I didn't realize it at the time, but
oh, that's fair. Was she the main one that was speaking?
I believe she was the scene where he goes to that like store and there's like that girl at the counter or whatever. I'm sorry, about Long Legs. I'm talking
about this movie, The Monkey.
Oh, sorry. I assumed it was like the main girl that like because the little dialogue or whatever. Yeah,
there's two that speak. There's like the main girl, then there's like an Asian girl who's got like a hat on who like sort of backs her up, and then the rest are just sort of standing there quietly. So
yeah,
that's interesting. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean that there's like again, for a movie that feels like it's just about like these very over the top deaths, I think there is still, a decent amount of stuff to unpack and that goes into it. Like like not enough that it completely works together, but again.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that we keep coming back to, is that it's trying to do this like deeper story about family and loss and like the relationships and like not giving up on them just because things are hard. But I don't know if that stuff ever quite gets good enough to really like anchor the film in the way that it wants to. But the fun stuff is fun, and it's well directed, and there's lots of things to like about it. I just don't think it all quite gels together in the end. So with that all said, Tim, what is your scene of the movie?
Again, there's like pretty much all of the deaths I feel like are memorable or funny in some way. Well, I guess except for the wasp one wasn't that great, but most of them are did give me at least somewhat of a chuckle. But again, I think the diving into the pool and just exploding really caught me off guard, and I laughed a decent amount in the movie, but that probably gave me the hardest chuckle. So I'll give it up for that one.
Yeah, the pool one's hard to top. I think I have to pick that one as well. I mean, I do think the shotgun one is good as well, because the shotgun one, where they open the door and this shotgun just falls, and there's like a split second where Hal's like, no, like he sort of realizes it's happening, and then the woman just explodes from the shotgun blast, and he's just covered in blood. And he stands there just drenched for like a minute before we move on. Like, yeah, that's pretty good. But I think that the pool one's probably my pick too.
Yeah. And there's a nice little joke with the gun one too, where like behind it on the wall, there's like a little, I think it was like crocheted or something, but a little thing on the wall that said, "Guns don't kill people, like people kill people." But this is like a case where it's like, no, the gun did actually,
literally just kill someone. Yeah. Yes, no one pulled the trigger. Unless we're talking about spirits from a monkey.
Yeah.
Which is still not a person, technically, so I guess...
Yeah.
Point stands. Very good. Mm-hmm. All right, MVP of the movie.
I think... this is actually really tough, because I think all the performers are really good. The grown-up pal, I think, is that Theo James?
Yes, that sounds right.
Yeah, I don't really know him much from anything else, but I did think he did a really good job. And then I think I'm torn between and then like the I don't know, it feels weird saying like guest stars or something, but like Adam Scott and like Elijah Wood, were really funny for their very brief moments.
Yeah. Elijah Wood was definitely more over the top, because his character had like the big comical like lantern thing that he was drinking out of.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think for me though, the two I would choose between would be either the kid performance, which again I thought they did a really good job, and it was surprising to find out it was the same actor.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why'd you keep saying they? It's just him. It's just the one guy.
It's just the one guy. So I'm going back and forth between him or Tatiana Maslany, which I think I'll give it up for her though, because she is like, kind of like the heart of the movie.
No, honestly, like her relationship with her kids is actually a big part of what makes the first chunk work, and like even just little slice of life things, like at one point when the monkey shows up in their bedroom and Hal shouts through, "Hey mom, did you put the toy monkey in here?" And she just responds with, "No, I don't go in there anymore ever since I found that stiff sock." Like that was a funny little slice of life. I mean, first of all, why do American movies always reference this sock thing? What are you all doing over there? You can't just get like something else to wipe your jizz stains, Tim? What's going on with these socks business?
Try it and you'll understand. That's all I'll say.
Ever since American Pie came out, I'm like, what is it with Americans coming out of socks?
Doubling what you're saying though, yeah, she had like a lot of funny lines, and I like that she wasn't like a perfect like saint of a mom. Like she still like got like very like frustrated and annoyed with the kids and probably like said stuff she shouldn't say to them, but you still felt like, you know, she was very like loving, and you can understand why, you know, the kids obviously would be like, you know, devastated without her and stuff.
She felt like a real person. She felt like a fleshed out character, even with the not getting as much screen time as other characters. And she was such a big motivation for the others, which, you know, that was something that worked in the sense that, yeah, she felt so important to them that this being a motivation made sense. It was just the lives that they lived seemingly between the time jump just didn't really vibe with me for what like Bill was trying to do in the later part of the movie. But that said, I'm not going to pick her just because I think the kids may be a bit more notable and actually has to carry the movie for the first like 40 minutes, which is very impressive to do as a kid actor, not only in general but as two roles is actually very impressive. So I'm going to give it to the kid. Christian Convery is his name. He was very good, so I'm going to give him the due here. All right, Tim, what are you rating the monkey?
So I, you know, despite, I feel like maybe we complained a lot, but I'm still not negative on the movie. I had a really good time. I thought it was a blast seeing it in theaters. Tons of great deaths. Again, you know, good performances. Like pretty much everything was working. It's just the fact that it, you know, it just wasn't like over the top to, you know, just get over that little hurdle to, you know, make it something a bit more special or whatever. But it's still really solid and well done. So I'm going to go pretty high and give it a 7.5, I think. To me, that's like, you know, like really good, but just not great, you know?
People who play video games and look at video game reviews are like fainting at you saying a 7-point high is 5.
That's that's low in terms of video games.
Oh yeah, if there's anything under like an 8, they like this. Oh, it's terrible. It's not worth even touching if it's under an 8. The joke is that video games only get reviewed between a 7 and a 10. You don't get. Okay. It's only lower than a 7 if it's like does like Uva Bowl level of like trash. Anyway, I'm torn between two scores here. I think my feeling for a lot of the movie was, oh, this is a solid 7. This is good. It's not great. It's just missing a few things. I think talking through it and talking about the stuff that didn't work for me, and I think this maybe did sound a bit more negative than I wanted it to, just because I feel like I've got more to say about like what. Like I feel like here it was easier to talk about the things that didn't quite amazingly work because it feels like it's close to greatness, and that's the stuff that sticks out is like why it doesn't just quite get there. So it probably had more of a negative tone than I really wanted it to. But talking through it, I'm wondering if like 7 feels just a touch high for me, and maybe a 6.5 is maybe more what I actually feel. But one thing that I sometimes think about is that when I'm rating a movie and I'm doing like a 0.5 or whatever, is that okay, but when I put this on Letterboxd, I always round down because I can't do like 0.5 of a 10 scale on Letterboxd, right? Because you've got half stars, so you can translate, you know, 7 out of 10 becomes 3.5 stars. 6.5 would be rounded down to 6 to get 3 stars on Letterboxd. And I'm looking at that Letterboxd rating in my head. Does that 3 stars feels maybe a little low for like saying how I actually had a good time with this. Which is all to say that I think I'm still going to go with a 7, but okay. You know, I've got complicated feelings, okay?
Sure.
I'm a complex person with complex feelings. Things aren't simple in life, so yes, that's my life. That's light life. But yeah, there you go. There's the thoughts on the monkey. Yeah, an interesting start to the year for us, horror movie wise.
Sure, yeah.
We'll be back to 2024 movies for the foreseeable future, but we'll be sprinkling in 2025 when things come up, of course, and anything we've missed already when it's available. What's funny is we did that big preview episode for Patreon, even more streams, and I got a trailer for that one, Opus, with Malkovich and Eo Idibri. Is that her name? I always forget her name, and even if I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
But I got a trailer for that, as well as Death of a Unicorn, and I want to say I got one other horror movie trailer, but I can't remember what it is now.
We got The Woman in the Yard.
Oh, I got that. That's the other one. Yeah, I got that one.
I'm trying to think if we definitely got a lot of trailers. I forget if we got like any other horror ones. Though.
I got 3 horror ones and then Fantastic Four. That was like the one non-horror trailer I got.
Yeah.
Which, as I was watching that, I was like, wait, you showed off what the Thing looks like. You're showing off the invisible powers. You're showing the Human Torch, like, flame on. Suspicious how there's no stretching, which makes me think that they've not quite nailed the effect yet, and they're like, oh no, this looks terrible. We can't show this yet. We have to keep working on this. Anyway, that is the show, everyone. That's been Screams After Midnight. You can support the show over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get bonuses for your trouble. Now, the Screams After Midnight bonus content is on pause for now, whilst Tim is still not sort of in a permanent place. We've got a couple of weeks here where we're banking a bunch of episodes, so you'll have at least another 3 or 4 weeks of episodes after this. But so we're just doing those, and then once Tim's actually moved into his new place and we're in a regular, consistent recording every week schedule, the Scream stuff will come back. But there is a back catalogue. There's a back catalogue of about 50 exclusive episodes on Patreon. There's a back catalogue of even more streams, and of course there's bonus shows for the other movie podcasts that I do with David, such as Criterion Cut and Extra Reels. Extra Reels being where we review some of the worst things of all time. So if Me and Misery sounds like a fun time, you can get that over there. And Tim did guest on an episode of that last year. We did Madame Web, so that was I can't say it was fun. That's disingenuous. It was an experience that happened, and you can see our 2.5 hour review of it if you would like to go support us on Patreon. But that is us. That is the show. Next up, it should be Smile 2. And I know that because we recorded it already. So Smile 2 is up next on Screams After Midnight. So I look forward to that. But that is us. Thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.